Hey everyone, welcome to the seventh Pocketnow podcast. I'm Brandon Miniman, editor-in-chief of Pocketnow.com. Also on the line, we have Evan, managing editor of Pocketnow. Say hi.
Hi guys, hi Brandon.
Hey, and we've got Tony, senior editor from Pocketnow. Say hi, Tony.
Hey guys, hey Brandon, hey Evan, nice to be here.
Yes, indeed. So,
Sounded very authentic.
Thank
Nice
you very
meeting you.
much.
did you
As
did you
always.
was that written down before you?
Yeah, I rehearsed some 1 hour before,
Oh,
so I have everything, every topic in my head on paper, ready to go live.
good.
Even the greeting.
Even the greeting. Well, everyone will appreciate that. So it turns out that we need a theme song for the Pocket Cast, and we want to do Jennifer Lopez's new song "On the Floor" featuring Pitbull, but there may be some copyright issues with that.
You're using the royal we, I assume.
The
Meaning
what?
the royal we, which means you and not the rest of us.
Yeah, I don't like that song either.
Oh, you don't like that song.
No.
Why don't you like that song? It's going to be so
Well,
hot.
I know it's gonna be hot, but first of all, it's a remix of an 85, I think it was 85 or 80, 89 even. It was called Lambada. And I know, yeah, the tunes are okay, it's a remix, but couldn't Jennifer Lopez come up with something original?
You know, music's not about originality. It's about, selling music and getting people interested with a cool
Right.
a cool club backbeat and a rapper and
Yeah, right. The beats are okay. I mean, Pitbull is okay, but it's maybe she's right. Something which sold like crazy 20 years ago will sell like crazy again 20 years after.
Are you talking about the chorus with I can't sing, so I'm not going to try, but maybe I should. Where the accordion, with the da 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 da. I'm not gonna.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the song from '89, and it's called Lambada. And let me just look it up. I think the original artist on that one was a Portuguese artist. Yeah, right here. It's from 1989, and song recorded by the French pop group called Kaoma with the Brazilian vocalist Loalva Braz. So I don't know if I spelled right.
Well, they're not fooling you. It also sounds like that new Shakira song. It has the same sound.
Something like that. Yeah, we should
Evan,
do a poll.
Evan, do you know the Shakira song I'm talking about?
No, I think the difference though is that, well, maybe not. I mean, is Shakira married with kids? I mean, neither. It seems like neither of these women should be singing about getting drunk on the dance floor and
What would their
stuff.
kids say? Um, yeah, but anyway, I think we should move on. But this song is it's pretty catchy, and if you haven't heard it yet, and you like sort of club, techno like music with a little bit of pop, I think you'll like it. Anyway, um, so we were getting some requests to release the Pocket Cast on Google Listen. Well, Google Listen isn't a host; it is just an application. Tony, you know more about this, right?
Yeah, it's a free application. It's on the Google Market. I also made a video this week. No, I think it was at the end of last week. What you have to do basically is go into the Google Market, search for Google Listen. It's a free app. Download it to your Android smartphone. And if you follow the steps which I've outlined in my video, add the certain RSS feed to your subscriptions, then you will automatically get all the new episodes as we release them.
Yeah, and what we're going to start doing is putting the feed directly into the post about the Pocket Cast, so you can see it right there. It's kind of long, and you can copy and paste that into your Google Listen to listen to the Pocket Cast on Android.
Is there any other place where we are not present with the Pocket Cast?
We've got Android, iTunes, Zune,
We're
direct
not on the radio
downloading.
yet.
We're not on the radio.
I haven't heard us on Sirius.
We're on our way to the radio.
We'll have to look into that, and then maybe on TV.
Yeah, but that makes us look bad on
YouTube's the new
camera.
TV.
YouTube is the new TV. Yes. Surprised they haven't made a YouTube branded TV yet.
Isn't that what Google TV is?
Oh yeah, they did do that. It's Google TV. Anyhow, so what are we starting today with, gentlemen?
Well, I'm hearing that you had a look at the Incredible S.
Yeah,
Tell me how it is, because everybody's crazy about the Incredible S, especially that it's coming to the US.
yeah. The Incredible S, sort of by itself, is a great device. kind of like the Nexus S by itself is a great device, kind of like the Nexus One by itself is a great device. But if you compare it to what else is out there right now, it's not so impressive anymore. And if you look at the price, it's a little less impressive when you consider the price. So, we rated it a 3 out of 5, because compared to the other phones that are out there right now, the Incredible S has last year's specs and last year's software. It doesn't even ship with Gingerbread at this moment in time. So, kind of lukewarm on it overall.
But it's got the intelligent buttons.
But it has the intelligent buttons, which will amaze and amuse your friends all night long. So, so that's.
So we're all just waiting for the Evo 3D now, I guess, for HTC to step it up.
Yeah, the Evo 3D on Sprint potentially announcing at CTIA, or the Pyramid, which may actually be somewhat related to the Evo 3D.
We'll find out.
We will find out. Okay, next thing we want to talk about, we talked about this a little bit last time, about Android force closing and sort of how often it happens to you. We did a poll on Pocketnow, and the choices were, or the question, start with the question, how often does your Android force close? The options were fourfold, several times per day, once per day, 1 to 2 times per week, and rarely. A third of people that responded said it happens either once per day or more. Another third said it happens 1 or 2 times per week, and another third said rarely. In your experience, guys, how often do your Androids force close when you use one for a while?
Meaning force close the app that you're currently on, or background apps?
Anything, just when you see that dialogue.
Well, I mean, I have that program, what's it called, Kill Them All or whatever. So I have it set to regularly kill the processes. So I'm not sure, but I mean, I think it does it like every half hour, and it's fine with me. I rarely see it killing the app that's in the forefront.
Right. How about you, Tony?
Well, you know me, I'm not an Android guy, but I've been using Android for approximately 4 or 5 months last year after the HTC Desire came to the market. And in those 4 or 5 months, I haven't actually seen an error or a force close. So, and this reminds me of Adam, because I see so many tweets and so many posts from him. His Android devices just keep on dying.
Yeah.
Force close, errors, and it never happened to me. I mean, yeah, it's stable. It's true that I never rooted one. I never installed so many applications, but basic email or other applications like Twitter, Peep don't die on me.
Yeah, me too. I think, as you imply, the better applications out there, the ones that get a lot of downloads because they're supported by big companies, they are very, very stable. If you download, a fart app created by, a 14-year-old who was messing around with code one afternoon, you might get a force close here and there. I'm also surprised when I hear Adam say how often his Androids force close.
Especially the mail program. So
yeah, the mail program, strange. I don't know what it is.
He's a power user. He puts us to shame. That's
Yeah,
right.
he simultasks, as Kyocera, created the term. He somehow manages to run 2 apps in parallel on the same screen, perhaps. Anyway, let us move on from that. So, let's see. On March 7th, we were talking about Nokia getting paid $1 billion to align with Microsoft and Windows Phone 7. And this was kind of new information. This is...
Although it was suspected that they got paid, just not the figure wasn't known.
Do you think that this figure is higher than the expectation or lower?
I think it's probably right around what people were thinking in the $1 billion range, but yeah, I mean, it had to be a big number, and Microsoft, certainly has cash lying around and the need for hardware partners. So, it seems like with this new information, Nokia becomes a bit more of a winner in this, although I'm still not sure how it's going to play out for them in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to presumably increase its research and development with this $1 billion, and make everything happen faster. But oh my, wow, $1 billion. That's a lot of research and development. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think, they'll probably use some of the money maybe to pay off some debt. And I know that they had to use at least part of the money to bribe some of their Symbian developers. I'm sorry, their Migo developers to stay to the end of the year so that because I guess they're really they're fearing a brain drain, so to speak, where people are leaving because these developers they don't want to work on Windows Phone 7, but Nokia still has Migo device coming out this year, and obviously it needs developers to support the software on that device. So in some cases, apparently it's offering I think twice people's salaries in order for them to stick around through the end of December.
Yeah, it could absolutely help with the developer support, and Microsoft even spent a lot of money on developers before the launch of Windows Phone 7, sending out the brand new devices to them, potentially paying some of the big companies to make Windows Phone 7 apps. So that's definitely a big consideration. Wow.
Okay, so here's how I see things, and I'm gonna start jerk mode as usual, or start evil mode. I'm gonna say that Microsoft paid 1 billion. That's the news. We will never know whether it paid $500 million or 2 billion. I'd say that some people could look at it like this: Microsoft paid 10% more than Google could. One, two. I'm seeing this, let's say 1 billion, as a short to medium term loan. Nokia is having some financial problems. Adopting Windows Phone 7 as a primary platform requires a lot of investments in the development department, in the production lines, and so on and so forth. Let's not forget that at the keynote, Stephen Elop and Steve Ballmer both said that there are certain keys from the ecosystem of Microsoft going to Nokia and from Nokia coming to Microsoft. And we have Bing coming and going. We have Nokia Maps, the OV Maps coming and going. So Microsoft might pay this amount for some certain services which we see or which we do not see from Nokia to come to them. Additionally, let's not forget that Nokia will pay certain licensing fees for every Windows Phone 7 they will produce and they will sell on the market. So a huge part of this amount will come back to Microsoft. And this is where I said that it might be a short or medium term loan.
That's a good point.
So we could see this from lots of perspectives. Now, whether it's 1 billion more or less, we will never find out. But I'm sure that it's more than Google could have paid.
Do we know how much OEMs are paying Microsoft to license Windows Phone 7?
Honestly, I don't know, but I will look it up and maybe even post about this one.
That'd be great. I think for Windows Mobile, I don't know the exact number. I think it was $20 to $40 per unit that HTC would pay to Microsoft when they sold a Windows Mobile device.
Okay, let's say the amount remained the same, and there was a news last week that Nokia is targeting to convert approximately 200 million Symbian users to Windows Phone by the end of 2013.
Wow.
Now multiply that, even half of that, with $20 a piece, and see what I'm talking about.
My calculator doesn't display that many numbers.
Yeah, huge amount.
Let's see here, 200. I'm really bad at math, but let me see. 200 times 20 times a million. That's a lot of zeros. And we've got, let's see, wow, that's a big number. What? $40 billion.
Yeah, they will most probably not make 200 million Symbian users go
No
Windows
way.
Phone. They will maybe make a fourth or a fifth part of that, but I think that will still cover the 1 billion which Microsoft paid to Nokia.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that the average Symbian user in Europe, because that I'd say that's where the average Symbian user is, would prefer to move to Windows Phone 7 or prefer to move to Android?
It all depends. If we are talking today, they will most probably move to Android. If we are talking in late October, November, or December, when we will see some Nokia hardware with Windows Phone 7 and Mango, then maybe they might turn to Nokia and to Windows Phone 7.
Yeah, it's all about the hardware, as we like to say. Nokia's got to make some awesome Windows Phone 7 hardware. I mean, is is a Symbian's user devotion to the Nokia brand or to the Symbian brand?
There's users that are devoted to both, but my point here is that I think Nokia made the wrong choice, and I hope that $1 billion was worth it because I think in the long run it could have done a lot better off becoming an Android OEM than a Windows Phone 7. Even if outwardly it says it's going to be able to distinguish itself more because there are less manufacturers, less phones on the market. I mean, it still seems like it came down to a matter of money, and Microsoft was willing and had the had a reason to pay more than Android, which is taken off like a rocket, whether it pays people to use it or not.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very important move for Microsoft, and when that happens, they unload their barrel of cash, and that's what they did here. So, cool. Let us move on. So, iOS 4.3 was released for the iPhone on, it looks like March 9th, so actually last Wednesday. Tony, you've installed it on your iPhone. What do you think about it?
Interesting question. Now, most of our listeners and readers probably know that I don't have that much experience with the Apple iOS and Apple devices. I've got my iPhone 4 last week, or was that 2 weeks ago? I've used iOS 4.2.1 for 3 or 4 days before 4.3 came online. Now, there were a couple of things which Apple advertised about it. Number one was a faster Safari due to some improvements in the Java section. I can tell you that it's probably not visible to the eye, but if our listeners have checked our comparison between the LG Optima 7 and the Samsung Omnia 7, if I was to load the same pages in sync between either of the Windows Phone 7 devices and the iPhone, I'd say the iPhone would load them faster. So definitely the Safari is faster than Internet Explorer in its current version on Windows Phone 7. Another one was the personal hotspot feature, which many users have wanted. And I've just discussed this with Evan this morning. I was asking because he has an iPhone for way longer than I do. Right after I received the update, I had the personal hotspot option available, and I think I've even showed it to you, Brandon. And ever since yesterday, it vanished from my phone. What? I don't find it in settings. I don't find it, so it vanished. I even hard reset it. I reinstalled everything. I reinstalled applications. I restored from backup, and it turns out that, reading on the forums, my carrier does not support tethering.
Oh.
Even more, my carrier doesn't even support iPhones. So the big question is, why was personal hotspot in the settings working and tested? I tethered to an Android device and it was working, and then the other day it's vanished. So it's a big question for me.
Wow, that's some crazy stuff. I wonder how the carrier presumably remotely disabled your tethering.
I don't know
there was
how
a lot
they
of
could.
carriers who went through this. I'm sorry, Tony.
Well, I don't know. It's such a small and new carrier here in Romania that I don't think that they even know about tethering and iOS 4.3. With all due respect to this carrier I'm talking about, they only sell, or let's say they give out free feature phones from Chinese companies like ZTE and Huawei. So they're really on the start. Maybe, as you implied, Evan, maybe they saw some activity on the network ever since 4.3 came out. They made the connection and they disabled it.
But I mean, that would have to be Apple that did that because if this carrier doesn't even offer the iPhone 4, it's going to have no way to access people's iPhones on its network.
Right, then how would exactly Apple disable it on my phone, not even knowing that I'm using his smartphone on an unknown network? So many question marks here. And another thing which is new in iOS 4.3, which I'm about to test, and I will even post a video on Pocketnow.com, is about wireless sharing of your library from iTunes to your smartphone. So I will make a video and check that out somewhere this week on Pocketnow.com.
Another thing, if you could check out, Engadget was posting about how to enable those hidden multi-touch gestures in iOS 4.3. They posted about it for the iPad, but I'm sure it could work on the iPhone.
Yes, it's the same thing. You have to jailbreak your device, and
Oh,
yeah, which is something I never root, I never jailbreak, and I never install hard SPL. But I will try to do that and make a video demonstration.
that would be really, really cool. It's a shame you have to jailbreak it to do that, but I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. Only
Well,
takes
that's Apple.
that's Apple.
It's a shame. I think it's great. The first thing I do with these devices is jailbreak them.
Even if you don't do anything after that, you just jailbreak it.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, when I first jailbroke the iPhone, I didn't have a need to do it. I wasn't even using any jailbroken apps or functionality. It was just sort of like I don't want to have one of these things that's not completely open to me, at least theoretically. It helps me sleep at night.
I was just gonna say it helps you breathe. It helps your lung capacity somehow.
Yeah.
That made no sense. Let's move on, shall we? So CTIA is coming up. Evan, what day do you leave? It's next week, right?
Yeah, I believe it's the 20th.
You are leaving this Sunday, and we expect to see at least something from HTC, the Nexus S4G, and the Evo 3D from Sprint. And now, posted last week, we were talking about potentially two new LG devices, although we only have a hunch of what one could be, which is the T-Mobile G2X.
And that's not really new. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, that's not really a new device. It's a device we already know about. That's being branded for a domestic carrier.
Yeah, so confirmation that we will indeed see that. And we really haven't talked much about the G2X. It will be, of course, a T-Mobile version of the Optimus 2X dual-core LG phone. And this is yet another example of a carrier taking a brand, the G brand, and having other OEMs, not just one, come out with the hardware for it. So we had the G1, which was HTC, the G2, which was HTC, and now the G2X, which is going to be LG.
And you don't forget the G tablet, which is also LG.
Ah, there you go, the G tablet. So it's always interesting to see how the carriers sort of use branding and change their strategy for that.
Do you think if HTC had at this moment a dual-core smartphone that maybe T-Mobile would have went with his brand of the G and with HTC as OEM?
Probably ideally, right?
I think it all depends on the carrier's relationships with the manufacturers at a given moment. And right now
they have history.
Right.
T-Mobile and HTC.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for a device like, what's essentially going to be, I'm thinking of the Evo 3D. Well, I mean, I would assume that if that's a dual core device, that may have been on the table for T-Mobile as well. But it seems like HTC is putting some of their best stuff on Sprint first.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Maybe that relationship has been the most fruitful for them. Even if HTC has a dual core phone coming out at CTIA, it's very possible that LG said, "Hey, we can get this Optimus 2X ready sooner for you, T-Mobile," and HTC said, "We won't be ready for this until the summertime." And T-Mobile they need to have a super powerful phone in their portfolio because you've got Verizon coming up with a dual-core smartphone. You've got at&t with dual-core. Sprint is going to have these new devices, and so T-Mobile needed something to compete.
Yeah, and I think also wasn't T-Mobile the first to launch with an Optimus One variant here in the U.S. with the Optimus T?
I think yes.
Right.
And that's obviously been successful for them. So why not go back to LG for more stuff?
There you go. It's fun to figure stuff out here. That's what we do.
At least we're trying.
At least we may be completely wrong about everything, but we pretend like we know what we're talking about. All right, let's move on. iOS 5.0 rumors are starting, although they've been around for probably months now. As soon as one version is released, we're already talking about the next. And it's possible that there could be an event in April where they talk about not only the iPhone 5 but iPhone or iOS 5.0. What is on your wish list, guys, for iOS 5.0? Number one thing they must include in this new version of the software.
Well, I think it's the gestures. Having to jailbreak for the multi-finger gestures is a little bit crazy. We have talked about gestures, I think, for a couple of months now, and we were all hyped up that 4.3 will bring them. And there's no gestures in stock 4.3, so we might see gestures on 5.0. But I don't think there will be an event in April. My personal opinion is that we will see an announcement of iOS 5 at the same moment, or at least a little bit preceding the announcement for the next generation of iPhone, because there will be some other implications. It's not going to be only the software, it's going to be tied to the hardware too. So this is how I see things.
When was the iPhone 4 event? Does anyone remember what month it was in?
June or July, I think.
I can find out in 2 seconds. Well, actually, it's going to be...
Oh, you have access to the internet now?
Yeah, they installed it just yesterday.
What's an internet?
What is internet? Here it is. Okay. It was announced June 7th, 2010.
Okay, and then it went on sale at the end of June or in July?
June 24.
Okay, that's sort of interesting. So Apple went from quite a big lead with the first iPhone. I mean, it was announced in January and it didn't come out till June of that year to less than a month now.
Yeah.
And one of the manufacturers' biggest weapons against the sites like ours and Engadget, Gizmodo, all the other phone sites is that one of their weapons against these leaks of products is that they've been announcing in their upcoming devices a lot earlier than in the past. I remember Apple used to, and it still does sometimes, it'll launch devices on the same day that they go on sale. And that seems to be less the case both with Apple and other manufacturers now. We saw all these devices at CES that weren't going to be ready for months, and I think it makes it easier for the manufacturers and the carriers to sort of beat us at our own game.
Yeah, if you look at the release cycle of even the iPad, it was released on April 3rd, 2010, but it was announced in March, sort of around the same time that the iPad 2 was announced in 2011. And now, Steve Jobs was talking about a device that was shipping 1 week later. So sort of this tightening of release cycles between announcement and release is definitely getting smaller.
Hopefully, we have thankfully some leaks from China and Hong Kong and from the supply chain, which could give us early indications of what's coming.
Yeah, thank goodness for those. Or else
It's interesting though, if I can just opine for another minute, because there's obviously the benefit to manufacturers for announcing earlier, but there's also a huge drawback, and that's that people aren't going to be as excited or as willing to put money down for current generation devices if they know that in a month, 2 months, even 3 months, most people could hold out for something that they know is going to be a lot better and probably the same price as hardware that's out today.
So what do you think the ideal threshold is to not only prevent leaks, but to keep consumer excitement up?
I'm not sure, actually. It would
Definitely not. Sorry, go on.
I mean, you're never going to be able to keep these devices out of the hands of testers and the people who are building them and whatever. So there's always going to be leaks no matter when you launch, I think. You're never going to get rid of that. But I mean, I think that what you asked is a calculation that each company has to do, based on their size and their current product portfolio and how much they need a hit. And there's just so many variables that play into that calculation. I don't think it's going to be the same for each company.
I like to approach my world with, one end or the other, and I would say that there is an ideal. threshold, and I think it's probably 1 week or 2 weeks. Because of course, what happens is when HTC announces phones that aren't going to be ready for 2, 3, 4 months, that really influences people's buying decision. They already know what HTC is coming down the pipe, like 4 months from now. But if you go with the company that releases things or announces things and then releases them almost immediately, it's almost like you want to hold out longer to see what that company has in store rather than buy the product that was announced 3 months ago, which now seems kind of stale.
Remember though, Brandon, that the later in the production cycle that the product gets announced, the more people that have had their hands on it, the more people have been testing it, the more likely it will have been leaked. You know what I mean? If you're announcing a product today that's going to be launched in a week or two, there's already boxes of that product probably in manufacturers' warehouses, while in factory warehouses. While if you announce a couple months ahead of time, it's much less likely that there's going to be good spy shots of the products. I mean, if we look at some of the stuff that got announced at CES, some of it we'd never seen. The Droid Bionic we had no idea about. The Inspire 4G, well, I mean, that's basically a Desire HD, but that wasn't even known about until the day beforehand. So they're doing a good job with these large gaps. Stuff is, it's effective in that respect, and that there's less stuff leaking out ahead of time nowadays.
Do you guys remember a time when this stuff didn't happen? I mean, there were these, consumer electronics. There was a new computer released, and the companies wouldn't hold a press event for it, and there wouldn't be spy shots. They'd just release the thing and put it up for sale when they were done.
Yeah, and well, it wouldn't have a name that consumers could remember either. It wasn't until I think Motorola really changed this with their Razr and their Riser and whatnot. But most consumer electronics used to be named by these like long model numbers. It's only recently that every single phone has a real English name, and that's extended to other products too.
And they're very feel-good names, like the Inspire and the the Incredible and the
Desire.
Yeah, it's so funny. I want to hear like the Razor Edge or the Scalpel or something.
They did have a scalpel, the SCPL, the Moto Scalpel.
Oh yeah, the feature phone.
Yeah.
Well, there are two things I want to say here. That first one is that sometimes, or maybe even most of the times, leaking out a shot or picture or a design of an upcoming device is in the best interest of the OEM. And in many, many cases, we see even OEMs doing the leaks themselves. Remember I think it was the Thunderbolt, which got the leaks directly from HTC. This is number one. And getting back to Brendan's question, which was the optimal threshold for leaking out or for announcing, between announcing and availability, I think it's 1 or 2 weeks. I agree with that, and it's definitely not what's happening with the Verizon Thunderbolt. I mean, I don't know, with all the hype around it for like 6 months, who's gonna actually buy that device.
Yeah, let's talk about the Thunderbolt. It's been delayed yet again, and the date.
Well, is it considered a delay if they're it was never announced when it was going to launch? So any of these supposed delays are just internal.
Yeah, but the perception was that it was going to be released maybe February, and somehow that perception was created, and I think it's the way the company was talking about the product. You're right, they never officially announced a date, but it's all about perception, and people think that this phone is just late.
It's nothing official, but it's hurting the product and it's hurting the brand.
Yeah, it is a little bit there. So March 17th, we've heard that date from a lot of different places, and that's in 3 days from now. Seems to be the time it'll hit.
Okay, I'll receive.
Oh, continue. I'm sorry.
I'll receive a lot of hate mail. I'm just going to say that I don't believe there will be a March 17th for the Thunderbolt. Go on, Evan.
Well, why is that?
Because there was a certain interview, or there's a certain statement from the CEO of Verizon, I think, and there were some problems. Besides the battery problem, which was rumored, Verizon might have some problems with the LTE infrastructure itself. They might have those modems ready and going. They might have the service in certain regions of the states, but I don't think that a certain battery problem, build problem, application problem could create such a big hype and such a big delay, even if it's delay from a rumor.
I sort of almost respect that, that a company wouldn't ship a product that couldn't take advantage of a new technology, because I am increasingly frustrated, and I bring this up every week. Evan knows what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
right. I didn't even have to wait for you to bring it up to know what you're going to say.
It's got to happen every time. I was on a conquest this weekend to find HSPA Plus. It's like Where's Waldo? Okay, so I drove from Philadelphia to New York. I happened to be going to a wedding, but that really wasn't the most important part. I was I was on a quest to find the HSBA Plus. I benchmarked in the outer part of Pennsylvania, all through New Jersey, and up into Brooklyn, Long Island, and also there's another island I was present in, and no, there was no HSPA Plus. There is no AT&T 4G, and if anyone out there has experienced their HSPA Plus network, please send us a benchmark picture, because I'm still getting at best 1.5 megabits per second down and like 200 kilobits per second up. And I take out any other phone on AT&T's 3G network, and I get double, triple those speeds. It's just so funny that the phone that's supposed to be faster is slower.
But this is somewhat normal, Brandon. If you remember, 2 weeks ago we have talked about the Inspire 4G having a registry edit or registry tweak applied to disable the fast speeds. Now, of course, the carrier went on saying that they are not capping speeds and they are everywhere with the high-speed infrastructure. But I think that the software itself has a limitation which does not allow you to take full advantage of the higher speeds which the carrier offers.
Well, here's the thing about that. The limitation of the HSUPA, which is limiting the upload speeds, that is a 3G technology. I don't really care about 3G. This isn't a 3G phone. This is a 4G phone. It's almost a moot point that...
So you're not even getting downloads?
What's that?
You're not even getting download speeds?
What do you mean?
I mean, is your download even lower than it would be on a non-4G device?
It is. It is.
Oh.
But to be honest, I don't really care. I want it to just be 4G. I don't care if it's, not 3G, although it's insulting that it's not even 3G. It's like a 2.5G phone. So the HSUPA thing doesn't bother me that much. I don't think that's the real story. The real story is that AT&T released 2 4G phones when there is no 4G. It's not in existence, and it's really bothersome. But I think we should move on because I think we've said enough.
Yeah, we're never going to get another review unit if we keep bad mouthing.
Yeah. Hopefully AT&T is not listening. I've had a lot of good experience with AT&T in the past, but this 4G thing has rubbed me the wrong way.
Do you think they hurried to get to the market?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the story here. Verizon's taking their time because they want to make sure they get it right, and there's a competitive advantage to being first and to getting it out, before another company.
And isn't this hurting more AT&T than if, let's say, they would have waited 2 or 3 months?
It's tough to say, but that would be my guess.
I don't know. Again, and Brandon, we've talked about this before. We're sort of in this bubble here where we think that the whole world knows about these little issues that we talk about. But the fact is that they really don't. And I think the average consumer needed to see AT&T do something. Even, they're not running bandwidth tests. They just want to see that AT&T is in the game that Sprint and Verizon and T-Mobile are in.
Yeah, I agree to some extent, although if you're buying an Inspire 4G or especially an Atrix 4G, you've got to be somewhat aware of what's going on, and you're probably likely to think about running a speed test because you must be curious about your 4G phone. Well, anyway, Let us move on.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. On March 11th, talking about Skyfire 4.0 coming to Android. We've talked about Skyfire before, and it's been interesting to watch the company evolve. Just 2 or 3 years ago, Skyfire. If you thought of Skyfire, you thought of speed. They did server-side rendering to allow pages to come through faster. And on Windows Mobile, it was a very, very good experience. And then they changed their model. Then they had a iOS release that cost, I think it was $1 or $2, that some people liked, some people didn't. And their sort of new model is that they kind of put a twist on web browsing. There's a little bar on the bottom where you can share your web pages, which I'm not even sure anyone wants to do. It's nice to email a page, but are you really going to tweet, Facebook, chat, read later, all these different things in a browser? I don't know. And they also added, video playing, flash video playing. So it didn't really work too well in the beginning, on iOS at least. It would extract the video, open up a dedicated player, and stream you the content. So the
Or
news,
not stream you.
or it wouldn't even work. But that was in the beginning. Have either of you tried Skyfire on iOS recently?
I have.
No.
How is it?
I shouldn't say recently, but I did try it a couple weeks or months after it was released on iOS and after they had given it an update,
Right.
to give it another chance. And it did work a little better, but there was still quite a few videos that it just timed out on. And in general, I mean, that's not the type of browsing experience I'm looking for. For me, good Flash integration is being able to do it in the page, not
Right.
In sort of a separate player. And I also want to be able to see other implementations of Flash other than just videos, which are in fact probably more important to me on a day-to-day browsing basis.
Like
the
web elements.
non-video uses of Flash. Plus, the older version of, or I should say the older model of Skyfire used to used to run like Silverlight and Java. It just had, it was really full featured, and
Right.
and it became a lot less full featured, and they started charging for it, and they cut off support for some of their old users. So in my mind, Skyfire has just sort of been making one mistake after another, and they can afford it, I guess, because people are buying this browser left and right.
Yeah, I mean they were the first third-party browser for iOS, isn't that right?
I believe Opera Mobile was first, or Opera Mini, and that opened the door for Skyfire.
Yeah, but I think Skyfire was the first one to claim to be able to do Flash, and that's
Absolutely, yeah.
that was great marketing. I mean, people wanted to. That's a story you can tell, and that's probably why Skyfire for iOS has been relatively successful, although users aren't, what's that word? Unanimously.
Unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. That word,
The
happy.
foreign guy just schooled you.
Oh, man. Anyhow, so the word on the street is that they're going to start charging for their Android version with the next Skyfire 4.0, and that there will be killer features. Now, guys, what can you think of that would be a killer feature in a web browser?
Oh, it all depends. I'm the other way around. Evan said that he likes Flash integration into the web page. Now, no, I don't like that, because if you have Flash integration in your Safari or in your Opera or in your Skyfire, you have all the ads and all the Flash animations, which, one, make your device slower, two, bump up your data consumption, and three, lower your battery usage. I like the way Safari implements a separate viewing of, let's say, YouTube videos which are embedded in a page. Mm-hmm. Number two, we are heading towards a new standard, which is HTML5. And HTML5, everybody knows that is rather competitive, and it will be kicking some Adobe Flash butt. So what I'm saying here, that it all comes down to user preference. Evan most likely will probably pay for a Skyfire version 4 because he likes integration of Flash into his pages, and he doesn't want to go outside of the browser to see a video. I will most probably not do that because I prefer to have a clean look of the page and control what's playing and what's changing on that certain page.
I wish I could get my money back for that I paid for Skyfire already. I'm not paying them anymore.
There you go. So, Evan, what do you think is a killer feature that Skyfire could have in 4.0 for Android?
Could be maybe extensions or yeah, extensions, widgets, whatever you want to call it. Something that brings in an API, some user developed content, sort of like what Firefox is doing on Android.
Yeah, that's exactly what comes to mind. But they're still in beta mode with the Firefox for Android, a really cool browser that allows you to plug in some extensions like you can for Firefox on the desktop. But they've been taking their sweet time with coming up with the final version, and I think a lot of people want it. So, you know,
Well, it's people donating their time, right? I mean, it's not a company per se. Like, well, it is a company, Mozilla, but a lot of this is volunteer work. These people just who have other jobs coding in their spare time, as opposed to a Skyfire and Opera, where those are for-profit companies that are working on this day in and day out.
right. Well, if those contributing to Mozilla can make an awesome browser like Firefox 4, which I recommend to anyone listening, it's really come a long way. Hopefully, they can get their act together to do the mobile version. To answer my own question, what would be a killer feature in a mobile browser? I think it's two things. One, really good tab management. And I think that Dolphin HD has really good tab management with tabs on the top, but that paradigm doesn't always work because there's not enough screen real estate. There's not enough pixels to have a desktop-like browsing experience. The way HTC, the way Apple does tabs is so annoying. You have to go into another screen, you filter between them. It's not fast and efficient. So I want to see awesome tab management. Number two, I want to see just a really good rendering engine. We have these very powerful devices. And yet, if you go to a long page with lots of graphics like Engadget and you flick down really fast, even on the iPhone 4, even on the Nexus S, you get some of that checkerboards, which is just kind of annoying and surprising at this point. So those are the two things that I think Skyfire could innovate on. But they're going to have like all these features and these buttons, and well, we'll see what happens with that.
Right.
Okay, let us move on. The next thing we wanted to talk about, Samsung Infuse 4G. Another AT&T 4G phone, but this time it's got a 4.5-inch screen.
Oh boy.
One of the largest screens, if you don't consider the Dell Streak, to come to smartphones. And it's got a very thin bezel, so it's a relatively pocketable device. Do you guys think that the Infuse 4G is going to be big?
Well, you already said it was big, Brandon. It's 4.5.
Oh, there you go.
But
We got to have some sound effects next time so we can do the drum.
Big in
seriously,
what point of view?
I think it'll be big. I think it'll be popular. I mean, there was a question remember when the HD2 came out, or the Touch HD or whatever, are people going to be into a 4.3-inch screen? And they totally were. And that became the norm, in fact. So if they can keep basically the same form factor and just bring the screen closer to the edges, yeah, I don't see any reason why people wouldn't want a device like that.
I agree. I think that bigger is better to a point in terms of smartphone screens. And, 4.3 inches is such a great size compared to even 4.0 inch. I know some people will disagree. The iPhone's 3.5-inch screen seems so small, but 4.5, it may be a little too big. Maybe not. What do you think, Tony?
Well, it's for me at least personally, it is too big because my sweet spot is somewhere around 3.7, 3.8, and I think that everything beyond 4 is too big. We're seeing a certain trend. Smartphones get larger and larger screens, and tablets get smaller and smaller screens. So we might see a point where these two might reach the same diagonal. But honestly, a 4.5-inch screen will be at least as big as the Dell Venue Pro or the Samsung Galaxy S2, even bigger, and that's a huge plastic bulk to carry around. Even if it's thin, even if it's light, it's a huge screen. There's no more privacy. Everybody sees what you have on your screen. So maybe it comes down to personal preference. I wouldn't buy a 4.5-inch screened phone.
Yeah. I gotta bring this up. I just saw an article hit our Twitter from Into Mobile. This looks interesting. It has to do with 4G on AT&T. I gotta.
Go on.
So the topic is AT&T 4G network is anything but 4G. They've got some quotes here from PC Magazine. Here's the quote from PC Magazine. AT&T is lying about 4G. Shamelessly, the company's two, quote, 4G phones and its, quote, 4G modem don't deliver 4G, even by AT&T's own wishy-washy standards. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as the 4G police, and AT&T is going to get away with debasing the term and confusing consumers to everyone's disadvantage. And they cite the Atrix 4G and the Inspire 4G. All right. Sorry, but I had to. I saw that. I had to. Okay, let's take some questions on Twitter. The first one here we'll send to Tony. It's from Mr. Kazoo. Can you remote desktop in Windows Phone 7? And if not, is this a feature we're likely to see in the future?
Well, there's an application which is, I believe, paid, and it costs a lot of money, beyond, I think, $19 or $20, which allows you to remote desktop with your Windows 7. And if there's a certain demand, I will probably make a video of it. It works pretty much like all other remote controlling applications. It connects to your desktop, and it all comes down to the screen size. You can control the applications, your desktop, basically from your Windows Phone 7. If it comes natively on Windows Phone 7 from Microsoft or a third-party application for free, I'd say no, or at least not in the near future. Because, yeah, go on.
I was just going to ask, what is the name of this application?
Well, I'm going to look it up, and we will have to post the link to the marketplace link in our post with the PocketCast.
That'd be great.
I've seen it. It's pretty expensive for what it does. I mean, I don't want to pay some 15 or $20 for an application just to control my PC remotely. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, remote desktop on a phone is sort of magic the first time you do it, because you get this, you get the start menu on the bottom, or if you're using a Mac, you get the other components of the Mac, the dock and whatnot. And it's just so interesting because it's like, I mean, 3 or 4 years ago when you could do this on a smartphone, it was so futuristic. But the truth is that there's almost no use for remote desktop in most cases on a phone.
It's called exactly remote desktop. I'm looking at it right now. It costs $40.99, and well, I don't want to pay that amount for controlling my desktop, even if it's from the kitchen or from the other part of the city.
Yeah, it's just a little bit too much there. Next question is from Mobile Dom. Simple question for me. Is your LG Panther still working, and do you still use it? The answer is no. The LG Panther was a developer device ceded to certain developers back in the summer, and I used it for a period of time, did some videos, but then I sent it back to the guy that sent it to me. Tony has a Taylor, which of course was the other Windows Phone 7 device. Are you getting the same updates on your Taylor, Tony, as...
Well, I think I'm having some problems with the Taylor because whenever I try to connect via Zoom and check for updates, it gives me a can't connect error. And I think this comes down to the fact that sometime, if you remember, there was a leak from the Samsung and Microsoft ROM which emulated and showed copy-paste. And maybe they might have blocked that certain feature. Maybe I will have to try to look for a ROM update from the developer part, because these are developer devices, but the Taylor works just fine. It's got the 7004 build on it, opposed to the 7008, which is the pre-Nodu update. And interestingly enough, it was a device which I liked very much because it was fluid, it was great build quality, but it had a certain front-facing camera. And I was wondering whether it was built like this on purpose, i.e. will there be front-facing camera support in Windows Phone 7 or not, or it was just an old chassis which Samsung decided to build the phone on.
I have a question for you, Tony.
Yeah.
Do you know Do you know why they named this one No Donuts? Is it was it a
There's
riff
there's a
on Google?
There's a story. No, there's a funny story behind this. There was an actual Microsoft meeting, and somebody at a certain point was sent out to bring donuts, and he or she wouldn't go. So this story might be true or not, or I might know the true version or not of the story, but they have decided to call it No Dough for No Donuts, with no relationship at all and no connections to Android.
Although Donut was the first named update, wasn't it?
Um, no, I don't think so. Donut was the
Or no, there was
one.
Cupcake before that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Let's move on to the next question from, that's a Babu. Should we be excited that dual core? No, should we be excited about dual core when it isn't even supported in the software until Honeycomb? I'll answer first, and you guys can chime in if you want. Yes and no. No, if you want the phone to be faster in things like email, web browsing, basically the built-in applications, because there's not that much of a difference with the dual core. But if you do a lot of video stuff, like watching videos, playing video games, then the answer is yes. In fact, they now have Tegra Zone, which points you to Tegra 2 optimized games. And on the Zoom, for example, this is a true story. You get some really stunning games through the Tegra Zone, and you can do the same on a dual-core phone. But in terms of day-to-day use, right now, there's not that big of a difference with these dual-core phones.
I agree. So without any support from the platform, from the OS itself, there is no need for a dual core processor. Yeah, it would be a definite need for a 1.3, 1.5 single core processor that would speed up application load times on the basic platform level. But as far as games are concerned, as you said, the Tegra Zone and the application market, which filters out the high-end applications for high-end devices, takes advantage of those dual-core smartphones. But it's all about gaming. If we talk about day-to-day usage, I think it would be beneficial to come out with a 1-point-something single-core processor, which would be faster than the 1 gigahertz Snapdragons we're used to.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, my this Inspire 4G, if we don't talk about data speeds, it's really fast. It's got the latest single core Qualcomm processor. Day-to-day operations, it is bloody fast. And last time I used a Motorola Atrix 4G, it felt slower. So there you go. One more question, and again, this one goes to Tony. It's from Koki V3. Is it possible for Microsoft to release hotfixes for WP7 that would bypass the carrier testing phase in case of a severe bug?
I think not. And this is because the very, very strong relationship between Microsoft and the carriers. So as far as I know, and I might be wrong, but from what my logic tells me is that Microsoft is gathering together all the bits of a new update, sends it out to the certain carrier for testing, and when that certain carrier approves the update, then gives the flag to Microsoft, which then gives the flag for the devices to update themselves. Without the carrier, it will be not possible. It might be possible for those devices which are not carrier bound, which are unlocked, but then again, it all comes down to fragmentation. We might see some devices running one certain build, and other devices, other builds. And that's not what Microsoft wants at the moment. So my thoughts and my conclusion is that we will not see updates bypass carriers.
There we go. There we go. Very good. Well, that concludes the PocketCast episode 7. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me as always.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you very much.
And thanks everybody for listening. You know, we do this because you listen, so thank you so much for your support and listening to the PocketCast, and we'll see you next time. That's it for now.
Bye-bye.